what that's going to do too. Should be great. All right, so we keep on going with the Sermon on the Mount stuff, and today, at first glance, seems simple enough. Here's Jesus. There he is. And the golden rule: do to others whatever you would like them to do to you. This is the essence of all that is taught in the law and the prophets. I pride myself on finding artwork of Jesus that really captures what that first century Jewish man who, had hard labor, so you can see in his soft hands, just how much hard work he did. And Jesus just got his highlights done for this particular photo. Anyway, we'll get back to why this picture of Jesus in just a bit. But this golden rule idea, everybody loves this golden rule. That's why it's the golden rule. We treat everybody like we want to be treated. It seems simple enough. Albert Schweitzer in the 50s won a Nobel Prize because he built some things about this. He said the first step in the evolution of ethics is a sense of solidarity with other human beings. He was a musician. He was a theologian, a pastor, and a physician. So he started a hospital for the poor in Africa, which is really quite powerful. Martin Luther King, he said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, because he recognized the solidarity of everybody. If we really want to do the golden rule, it means there are certain things we're not going to do to other pockets of society. And I love this. The original image did not have the injustice quote. It was just, the time is always right to do what is right. Isn't that great? Mahatma Gandhi, he also picked up on this theme. The simplest acts of kindness are by far more powerful than 1,000 heads bowing in prayer. Yeah, I love that. And of course, these particular people that we just saw were informed by their particular religious tradition. So multiple religious traditions celebrate this golden rule. Before Jesus, about a generation before Jesus, there was a rabbi who informed much of the Jewish world, was well known. Certainly Jesus was aware of his teaching and wisdom. His name was Hillel. And one person comes up to Rabbi Hillel and says, a skeptic, he was a non-Jewish person and kind of didn't know if he bought into this whole Jewish stuff. And he said, I'm going to stand on one foot and you explain Judaism to me. And Hillel responded this way: what you yourself hate, do not do to your neighbor. This is the whole law. The rest is commentary. Go and learn it. It's basically the golden rule, but coming at it from a different angle. But this is not something that Judaism owns or Christianity owns, even though it came out of Jesus' mouth. Other traditions have similar things. When Confucius was asked for a single word to sum up the rules of life, he answered, is not reciprocity such a word? What you do not want done to yourself, do not do to others. In Jainism, we get it this way: a man should wander about treating all creatures in the world as he himself would be treated. I love the expansiveness of this. So it's not just people, it's the planet, it's everything. Because we're connected to the planet. We're not separate from it. That's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Hinduism, which predated Judaism significantly, we get this: people gifted with intelligence and purified souls should always treat others as they themselves wish to be treated. Now, this is important because when I was a kid growing up in church, we kind of made Jesus out to be the real author of the golden rule. And a big deal was made out of him saying, do unto others, this proactive, imaginative ethics, toward other people. But Judaism before him said, don't do stuff that you don't want done. But he was proactive. But looky here. I mean, this way predates Jesus, and they're saying the same thing. It's almost like the presence of God, the winds of the Spirit of God, are inspiring people toward the same thing. And wouldn't that be something? Isn't that obvious that that's what the divine would be doing in all cultures and creeds, wanting to say the same lovely thing to inspire us toward that same goal? Centuries after Jesus did his ministry, Muhammad was remembered saying this: none of you truly believes until he wishes for his brother what he wishes for himself. And of course, all of these things together, these different winds being expressed from other religious traditions, came to more people. And so a Methodist, I think he was a Methodist minister, but I know he was a minister, Mr. Rogers, he came up with this: there are 3 ways to ultimate success. The first way is to be kind. The second way is to be kind. The third way is to be kind. I think he's right about that. John Wesley, who he and his brother started Methodism. If you know anybody who went to a Methodist church, you can thank him. He says it this way: do all the good you can by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can. Well, that's pretty good. Yeah, way to go, John Wesley. But some of us can't remember all that. I mean, that's wonderful, but some of us need something shorter. And so maybe this is how we need to think about it. Be the person your dog thinks you are. Am I right? Absolutely. By the way, if you've ever met Chelsea Wagoner, Gordon and Ann's dog, that's kind of a spitting image of Chelsea if I've ever saw one. Yeah, beautiful little dog, and loves us. So the golden rule, everybody gets it. Everybody agrees with it. We all love it. That's what we should do as we go into Thanksgiving week. It's what we should all be about. Love people, be our best selves. It all makes sense, doesn't it? It seems kind of obvious. There's not much really more to say, is there? So I'm going to give you a lot of time back today because it seems so simple. Unless it's not. Unless there's more here. Because I can't help think about Ed. Not Ed Edwards, our beloved Ed Edwards. I'm thinking about a different Ed. I'm thinking about Cousin Eddie. Everybody knows a Cousin Eddie of different forms and shapes and all that. But Cousin Eddie, if you've never seen Christmas Vacation, then you clearly don't have a television or cable, because this has been on repeat for about 40 years, this movie. Cousin Eddie shows up in his dilapidated RV with his family in tow, surprising the Griswold family at Christmas. He does not come from the same world that the Griswolds do. He's got different ideas about everything, just kind of living his life out loud. This is the guy that, when he comes in for a hug to his to Clark's wife, he wants more than a hug and tries to kiss her and all this. Is just creepy all over the place. He doesn't really understand, boundaries and all that. He kind of offers some ridiculous things and here and there and all that, does weird things. And interestingly, not spoiler alert coming in case you haven't seen the movie, if you're the one person in the world that hasn't seen the movie, he ends up being the hero of the whole thing, right? And so all of us kind of probably have some ideas about some Clark Griswolds. And the reason I bring out, or Cousin Eddie, and the reason why I bring up Eddie is, if Eddie reads the golden rule, Eddie is going to interpret the golden rule according to Cousin Eddie's worldview and mindset. And it could very well be that we might want to get a little anxious about that. Because if we've invited Cousin Eddie to dinner, or we know we're going to see Cousin Eddie at dinner, and we encourage everybody around the table to follow the golden rule, Eddie might do it. And we might not be happy about that. Do any of you know a Cousin Eddie that, they're invited to dinner and you're just not sure what's going to happen with that person? Yeah, right. But here's the thing, especially knowing that Cousin Eddie is actually, this adorable character in the story. What if you are Cousin Eddie to somebody else? Isn't that possible? That maybe we're the Cousin Eddie. And like the actual Cousin Eddie and the character has no idea he's Cousin Eddie. He's just Eddie, being Eddie. What if we're the same? We're just doing us and have no idea what that means as we carry that forward, which is why I stuck with this image of Jesus, which in no way, I think, reflects the actual historical Jesus. This, I don't even know, was probably painted by somebody in Northern Europe and was probably commissioned. And in that commissioning, there was probably an arrangement, as was the case for a lot of artwork in that day, that when the person who's commissioning this piece of art is talking to the artist, he's giving instruction. I want Jesus to look a lot like me. And so we get this fair-haired Jesus. Of course. But we see the problem with this, and this represents what we're talking about when I'm talking about Cousin Eddie's worldview. Whoever commissioned this had a bias of what they assumed Jesus, this great figure in history, must have looked like. And of course, must have looked like me. Well, that can get dangerous. Amy Jill Levine says this: without the full biblical context of the Golden Rule, especially the gospel's interest in higher righteousness, loving enemies, and avoiding hypocrisy, the three major things that Jesus also talks about in the Sermon on the Mount, the Golden Rule is easily deformed. She goes on to say, a missionary might think, because I would want to be a Christian and would, therefore, want to be disabused of my previous non-Christian culture, therefore, I will not only take indigenous children away from their parents, but also forbid them from speaking their own language and worshiping their own gods. Do you see what's happening here? This person, this character that she's imagining, well, didn't imagine, this is actually history, is thinking, I want to do God's will. I'm going to follow that golden rule. And if I were that indigenous child, I sure wouldn't want to burn in hell. So I am going to do them a big favor and take them away from whatever tradition they know and are fed by, and I'm going to give them the right religion so that they get to go where I'm going in my way. And of course, we've done this through history, haven't we? In American slavery, some of the slaveholders wanted to ask their slaves to be grateful that they were slaves, because if they'd have stayed in Africa, they wouldn't have heard the gospel of Jesus and would never have become, in their words, saved. So they ought to be grateful. It's atrocious how we do mental gymnastics based on our worldview, based on our biases. And of course, we see things happening with this. On the politics verse, what the hell is going on? That's exactly the right phrase for this moment, because we see kind of a reversal in things of people saying, well, women should only be this. And we got to wonder, where is that coming from? It can only come from a particular bias. So there's danger here. And she goes on to say, Amy Jill Levine, in evangelizing and being the light of the world and to the world, one does well to show what is right with one's own tradition, not what is wrong with someone else's. One evangelizes, which means to share good news by love, not by compulsion. So that whole thing got me thinking, and that horror story about the indigenous children, and I know that that's a possibility, and it was a reality here in the United States and in Canada for sure. That's an atrocity. How can we prevent that? And so I'm wondering, for ourselves, you and I, Cousin Eddie's in the room, how can we grow? How can we become more aware of those things which might compel us in a direction that is not shalomi at all, does not reflect at all what Jesus is talking about? How can we avoid thinking that we're doing the golden rule, doing unto others as we wish done to ourselves, without violating somebody else and the golden rule itself? And so this past week, I was reminded in an email I got from Center for Action and Contemplation, Brian McLaren, who was a prolific author, had some comments about this. He's written a ton of books, and he himself has a journey similar to Michael's and mine, where had some challenges with some previous ways of thinking and grew through that and got in trouble because of those things and talking about those things. And now he is actually helping run Center for Action and Contemplation. And in part of the daily devotional that we get, if you get that too, maybe you came across this very same thing. He talks about different biases that we struggle with as people. And I think it's important for us to recognize the biases that are out there for a couple of reasons. One, if we know that they're out there, then we know it's something that maybe we need to take a look at. Maybe it's something we can work on so that when we go to play out the golden rule and put that into action, imaginative ethics is a fancy word for that, then we will do it the most lovely way possible. But if we don't know what kind of biases we struggle with, all of us as human beings, we're more prone to just keep on keeping on the same way. Does that make sense? So I'm going to buzzsaw through these. I timed this out because there's a lot of them that he identifies. I timed it out. If I don't get distracted, which I never do, this will only take about 5 minutes to get through these. But here's why I want to do it. I want you to be informed about it so you see it. Some of these are going to stick with you and resonate with you. Some of these are going to be like, oh, I know somebody who that is. And guess what? It's also you. And just to be aware of it, that we might be humbled, that we might get off our high horse and realize that we are all works in progress, that we constantly need to wonder how we've been shaped and formed because it is informing everything we do and think. And then also, as we read through these, recognize that every other human being we're going to come across struggles with the same stuff. Maybe if we recognize that, we'll be a little bit more humble ourselves and treat others with humility. More curious than blaming. Okay, are you ready? Here we go. Take a deep breath. Here we go. The first one we have is confirmation bias. We judge new ideas based on the ease with which they fit in with and confirm the only standard we have: old ideas, old information, and trusted authorities. As a result, our framing story, belief system, or paradigm excludes whatever doesn't fit. When Jesus talked about what he was bringing was new wine and you couldn't put it in old wineskins, that's what he's talking about. Had to do with confirmation bias. The next one we have, complexity bias. Our brains prefer a simple falsehood to a complex truth. Community bias. It's almost impossible to see what our community doesn't, can't, or won't see. Racism in America, anybody? That's one of these, community bias. The next one, complementarity bias. If you are hostile to my ideas, I'll be hostile to yours. If you are curious and respectful toward my ideas, I am more likely to respond in kind. Competency bias. This one's really interesting for our day and age. We don't know how much or little we know because we don't know how much or little others know. In other words, incompetent people assume that most other people are about as incompetent as they are. As a result, they underestimate their own incompetence and consider themselves at least of average competence. This, I think, has really risen in the age of the Google, right? Because now everybody feels like they know as much as anybody else or as little as anybody else. Have you ever been in a conversation where somebody, you're talking about a delicate issue, probably, I'm getting sidetracked, but it's a delicate issue politically perhaps, and somebody says, well, nobody really knows what's the truth. That's an example of this incompetency bias or competency bias. All right, we'll keep trucking. The consciousness bias. Some things simply can't be seen from where I am right now, but if I keep growing, maturing, and developing, someday I will be able to see what is now inaccessible to me. There's a real ugly theological rendition of this, and it has to do with horrible things happening in the name of God or just in the world, especially if you hold a view of God who's in control of absolutely everything. And it goes like this. Well, we know the atrocities that have happened throughout time and all the horrible things and all the millions of people who've suffered, but one day when we get to heaven, it'll all make sense and we'll all agree that everything God planned was exactly as it was supposed to be and it was all for good. That's that writ large. And it's ugly and awful, and yet a theologian named John Calvin, who started a whole different weird way of thinking about God, was all about it. And maybe you've been taught that too, and I just want to encourage you, there's another way. Let's see, where are we? We just did consciousness. All right, next one. Comfort or complacency bias. I prefer not to have my comfort disturbed. I don't think any of you are guilty of that one. Conservative liberal bias. I lean toward nurturing fairness and kindness or toward strictly enforcing purity, loyalty, liberty, and authority as an expression of my political identity. Of course, we've been put into our corners in the last several years. Confidence bias. I am attracted to confidence even if it is false. I just want somebody to be loud. I often prefer the bold lie to the hesitant truth. Catastrophe bias. We struggle with this one because of the media news that we endure. Catastrophe bias is this. I remember dramatic catastrophes, but don't notice gradual decline or improvement. So this phenomenon came up in my midweek praxis group that we held. And we were talking about a range of things as we're walking through the book. Oh, did nothing happen there? What happened? All right. Oh, I missed one. Thank you, Gordon. All right. Is this where we are? Nope, next one. Thank you. Thank you for paying attention. I should too. The catastrophe bias showed up in my midweek group. And we were talking about kind of the world going to hell in a handbasket and all this. And all of us were sort of lamenting and feeling like, oh, it just feels like it's getting worse and worse and worse, because that's what we're seeing all the time in the media. But then the group kind of reminded each other that even though there are lots of things that are awful and need to be addressed, overall, humanity has progressed significantly. And rights for people have progressed significantly. We're living longer now than we ever have in human history. Women have more rights than they ever have in human history, which is not to say that we're done. We got a long way to go. LGBTQ rights, oh my goodness, enormous strides have been made. Here in this church, you can be a woman and you can rise to any level of leadership, including the senior pastor in this church. That's remarkable. Our Board of Stewards leader right now is Pam Gums, and she happens to be a woman. And our vice chair is Angie Barker Jackson, also a woman. That means for the next 2 cycles, we know we have women at the top, which is awesome. And same goes with LGBTQ. Here, there is true equality and openness for everybody to experience that. That is a sign that even though it feels like the world is going nuts, there is a trajectory that is good and positive, and we can't lose sight of that. The next one has to do with contact bias. Oh, this is so true. When I don't have intense and sustained personal contact with the other, my prejudices and false assumptions go unchallenged. The cash bias. It's hard for me to see something when my way of making a living requires me not to see it. Probably every industry has this. I know this happens with clergy. Part of the delicate dance that we did here as Crosswalk evolved from where we were to where we are. It's kind of crazy because, I'm bringing up questions over 25 years, talking about different things and wondering about things. And I know I'm making people very uncomfortable. And the people I'm making uncomfortable, I should have thought this through, are actually paying for my salary and my life here. It's like, you moron, what are you doing? You're gonna lose everything. But it worked out. So that's nice. But how much does the cash bias cause other people to stop? We think about that with politics. Why aren't people saying what needs to be said? It's because there are purse strings involved. In every system, this is the case. The cash bias is there. The conspiracy bias. Under stress or shame, our brains are attracted to stories that relieve us, exonerate us, or portray us as innocent victims of malicious conspirators. The next one, constancy baseline bias. Early in life, our brains set a baseline of normalcy based on what we constantly experience day to day. What our brains determine as normal or constant becomes acceptable to us. Later in our life, our baselines may be reset with a new normal becomes our constant experience. This is the flip side of the catastrophe bias. We sort of gradually morph into the new. And frankly, that's a lot of how we have become the crosswalk that we are. Just a couple more. We have the certainty closure bias. Oh, I've been guilty of this. Our brains find it difficult to rest when we feel uncertainty. So we would often rather reach for premature closure on an unwarranted certainty than live with the appropriate uncertainty. We may even prefer a pessimistic certainty to a potentially optimistic uncertainty. You ever done that before? Rush into a decision because you just want the decision to be made. And it may not be the best decision, but you're tired of being in limbo, so you just go for it. Well, that's a bias. That causes us to rush to judgment and rush to things that we otherwise might not. The final one. All right, 7 minutes. The final one. Our brains are vigilant to protect us against deceptions, and this vigilance against deception can make us so habitually skeptical that we become cynical, rejecting all good or encouraging information as naive. In protecting ourselves from danger, we can unintentionally insulate ourselves from positive possibilities. That's a lot. At first I was thinking, I'm not going to give all 16 because that's ridiculous. They're just going to see a guy on stage reading. But then I thought maybe I'll just focus on maybe 5. But then I thought, it's better. It's better to see the enormity of it. to recognize that there are so many ways that the way we see the world and the way we think about everything, including ourselves, others, and God, have been affected by how we've been shaped and formed. And if we're not aware of that, it's going to complicate us doing the very good thing that Jesus told us to do. Do unto others as they would have done to us. So I wonder if this might be a helpful approach, that perhaps the most loving thing we can do before we do unto others is to be curious about who we're with. Discover what forms of doing might be welcome, what forms of doing would not, and respectfully do unto others what would communicate love and respect to them, which is what we would want done to us. So as you head into your Thanksgiving dinner this week and somebody pulls a Cousin Eddie and says something awkward that makes you uncomfortable, if it's politics or if it's just a cringe factor thing or what have you, and it's rubbing you the wrong way, check yourself. If you start to feel that, maybe say, that's the bias talking. I wonder what's going on here. And instead of going sideways with the person, maybe we become curious instead. Hey, that's an interesting perspective. Where are you coming from with that? Help me understand. That engenders conversation and dialogue and mutual respect. And who knows? You might be the Cousin Eddie who says the thing that makes other people uncomfortable. And wouldn't we all rather have somebody treat us that way rather than just let us go on being our foolish selves? So we're all in this thing together. We're all human beings. We all have a lot to grow and learn on ourselves. And the more we do, the more we realize everybody does too. The more grounded we are in actual reality, the more capacity we have to have graceful eyes toward others, even as we have them toward ourselves. And so as we close this teaching out, I want to lead you in just a brief meditation, and Mike will come up and lead us in a formal response with his stuff. Let's just get in touch with what has happened here in this space. So if you would, close your eyes, join me in some breathing. And as you breathe, I want you to identify, if possible, one or two things that stuck for you today. Could be in the music, could be in the teaching, could be one of the quotes on the slides. What caught your attention? Just acknowledge it. Maybe it was one of the biases really hit home. I want you to take just a couple cycles of breath and wonder to yourself, why did that one stick out? What was it about that I needed to hear? Now, I'm biased. My bias is that I believe that the Spirit of God, divine breath, is at work in this space. And that even if you have a difficult time acknowledging a source of that breath, the nudge that we feel at times is real. And our understanding of love and compassion is real. So I'm wanting you to think maybe love is behind the nudge. Maybe kindness, the Spirit of God, is behind bringing these few things to your attention, because this love knows you and loves you and wants you whole and restored. I think the divine continues to whisper. And I'm wondering now, what is that whisper inviting you to do in response to what you've experienced so far today? Is there a thing? Is there just an awareness? Is it a nudge to reach out to somebody that you've dismissed? Is it an owning of your own bias that has kept you guarded when you can be open because you're loved? Spirit of God, continue to breeze through this place. Continue to nudge, invite, remind us that we're loved, that you're with us, that you are with everyone on this journey to well-being, to shalom, to love. May we keep our ears open, our minds open, our hearts soft. And as we run into this Thanksgiving week, may we find ourselves just grateful to be alive in the company of others. And if we find ourselves alone, may we realize that we are never alone. I ask all this in the name of the Jesus that we follow. Amen.